Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or The Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down my week number 3 running back start or sit decisions for the 2024 fantasy football season. We're going to be breaking down every single matchup from Thursday Night Football all the way up until the doubleheader on Monday Night Football, and I'll be telling you guys whether I believe you should start or sit the running backs in all of those games. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, then please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 3 running back start or sit decisions for the 2024 fantasy football season. We begin with Thursday Night Football, the New England Patriots at the New York Jumbo Jets in Gotham. In this matchup, I like both of the starting running backs as potential top 12 options on the week. Now, Ramondre Stevenson has taken the defense's lunch money in back-to-back weeks as a top 16 running back, and based upon where you had drafted him, at least based upon his early season production, things are going very, very well for you, and I believe he continues that trend this week up against the Jets. The Patriots' game plan with Jacoby Brissett under center is incredibly simple, and that is keep it simple, stupid. They want to establish the run and have Jacoby Brissett make the easy throws. Don't overcomplicate things. Don't make Jacoby Brissett run around behind the offensive line like a chicken with his head cut off, having to make incredible throws with great timing, perfect timing. Shout out Shedeur Sanders, right? Having to make these crazy sidearm throws. No, just keep things simple and have Stevenson pound the rock. And Stevenson has looked like he did back in 2022 when he was awesome in fantasy football. And with how the Jets defense has looked up against running backs where Tony Pollard and Jordan, the numbers, Mason, what do they mean, have ran trains on that Jets defense, I fully expect yet another great showing out of the running back going up against the Jets. So I believe that Stevenson is a high-end running back 2 for me, with the upside of cracking into the top 12. Now, Antonio Gibson looked great last week, but with his touches fluctuating so rapidly from week 1 to week 2, and with that being such a small sample size, I am not ready to yet go out and say you really need to be starting Antonio Gibson. For the Jets, Breece Hall ended up getting vultured not once, but twice last week by Braylon Allen. And while it wasn't the biggest of deals, right, because Breece Hall was still a top 6 back on the week, it obviously sucks that Breece Hall couldn't have that 30-plus point performance that, in my opinion, he deserved. Breece Hall is exactly what we thought he was going to be coming into fantasy football drafts. He is a must-start running back every single week, and he is the clear workhorse running back on the Jets, playing 70+% of snaps in back-to-back games. While the Patriots defense has looked great up against the run through the past 2 weeks, I expect Breece Hall to break that wall down like the fucking Kool-Aid man. Oh yeah, and have a super big game here. He is a clear top 3 running back in my rankings, and I will heavily consider ranking him as the running back 1. Braylon Allen, like I said with Breece Hall, he did end up finding the end zone twice, but I do think that is going to be more of an anomaly with Breece Hall healthy. He showed us his clear upside, where if something was to happen to Breece Hall, knock on wood, we don't root for injuries, Braylon Allen could be a league winner. But with Breece Hall healthy, I definitely think Braylon Allen deserves to be riding the pine. Next up, we move to the Sunday slate, beginning with the New York Football Giants at the Cleveland Browns. Now, Devin Singletary ripped off a top 24 running back performance up against the Commanders, and while that's all fine and dandy, while that's great if you started him last week, the Browns defense is the polar opposite of the Commanders. Hasbulla could run for a touchdown up against the Washington Commanders, and the Browns D is rock hard like they're off some Viagra, so I fully expect this to be a come down to earth game for the whole Giants offense, hopefully, except for Malik Neighbors. I really do believe that the Browns are going to be up in this game, leading to the game script going away from the running backs, and I think it would be incredibly foolish to start Devin Singletary in this matchup. Tyrone Tracy, he's the backup, right? Singletary is still the clear lead back-to-back games with 70% or more snaps. So until further notice, you definitely can't even come remotely close to starting Tyrone Tracy. For the Cleveland Browns, Jerome Ford F-150 will be a start. Now, D'Onta Foreman's usage in week 2 up against the Jacksonville Jaguars definitely played a factor into Jerome Ford not having a big game in a matchup that I really liked. While Ford was the far more efficient running back and he led the team in rushing yards, Ford had just 7 carries compared to Foreman's 14, double the amount of carries for Foreman, which was a huge shock to me as Ford had a clear stranglehold over the backfield just a week ago in week number 1 with 75% of the snaps. Now, I'm not going to full on panic mode here as this is a wet dream matchup up against the Giants defense, but I will hold my breath on sitting here and declaring him as a top 12 running back for the week due to Foreman's usage last week. Still a clear low-end running back 2 for me. The upside is certainly there, but the usage last week does have me at least a little concerned. Not full-on DEFCON 5, pull the alarms, break glass in case of emergency, but definitely not the most promising in my opinion. D'Onta Foreman is the backup. Foreman had all the carries with 14, but he only averaged just 3 yards per carry compared to Ford's 9.1. It would be very risky to assume that Foreman will maintain a similar role to what we saw last week after his poor performance, so there is no need to start D'Onta Foreman. Next up, we move to the Green Bay Packers at the Tennessee Titans. Now, Josh Jacobs for the Packers last week looked sharper than Patrick Bateman's axe in American Psycho up against the Colts. The man had 32 carries. You heard that right. 32 carries for 151 yards. The problem was even with that many touches, since he didn't find the end zone, you are left feeling a little bit empty. Ultimately, he feels like a solid bet to be a top 24 back as the Titans got their clock cleaned by Breece Hall and Braylon Allen last week, but I am hesitant to give him a super high ranking due to the offense not really moving the ball effectively with Malik Willis under center. He'll be a low-end running back 1 to high-end running back 2 in my rankings, due to the offense running on Jacobs, right? America runs on Duncan without Jordan. Love me tender, love me sweet. With Malik Willis under center, the offense needs to run through Jacobs in order to succeed. But Jacobs has kind of been a letdown back-to-back weeks. He looks good on paper. Just the fact that he hasn't found the end zone just hasn't been positive for them. But now that I say all this, now that I'm getting a little bit worried about Jacobs, the man's going to run in like 4 fucking touchdowns against the Titans. Emmanuel Wilson is the backup, in my opinion. Marshawn Lloyd is now back, though, which means any random shot that you could have just YOLO'd and said, you know what, I'm going to start Emmanuel Wilson, is now just null and void because there is a much stronger snap share between Emmanuel Wilson and Marshawn Lloyd. Tony Pollard might end up being one of the biggest steals in fantasy football drafts all offseason based upon everything I could find. I scavenged the internet. I searched through everything. It seemed like this was going to be a 50-50 down the middle split. And all summer, I was like, you know what? I'll take Tajay Spears ahead of Tony Pollard. Why? Because Tajay Spears is going later, so I'd rather have the guy going later. If you want to draft Tony Pollard, go right ahead. But based on what we saw to Tony Pollard last year, I don't necessarily think he is the greatest of picks. But boy, was I wrong, as he is the clear lead back in Tennessee, and that is crystal clear at this point. Going into last week, the team said they want to get Spears more involved, and that just really wasn't the case. Back-to-back top 18 performances for Tony Pollard, and with him seeing 4 or more targets in both games, it would be insane in the membrane to bench this type of production. I like the matchup up against the Packers defense, and think we could easily see Tony Pollard rank inside of the top 12 like he did up against the Bears in week number 1. Pollard is knocking on the door. FBI, open up, as a must-start potential running back. And just like Jerome Ford, who we talked about before, will be ranked as a mid to low-end running back 2. And I think I would start him over Jerome Ford. If my running back 2 spot was between Ford and Pollard, I definitely would lead with Pollard, even though this matchup isn't as mouth-watering. Tajay Spears, sit him. Not only has Pollard been dominating the backfield in terms of touches, Spears also got hurt. He suffered an ankle injury on Sunday. And while, according to everything that I've read, it doesn't seem like anything to worry about on the surface level, though, it would be insane to play Tajay Spears based on what we've seen after the last 2 weeks. Next up, we move to the Chicago Bears at the Indianapolis Colts. And I said all offseason that drafting DeAndre Swift was as stupid as trusting a prostitute won't give you syphilis, right? It was a very risky proposition. I talked about the offense, how I believed the usage wouldn't really go the way of DeAndre Swift. And I have been right. Back-to-back weeks with fewer than 10 fantasy points. And the dude has averaged just 1.3 yards per carry up against the Texans in prime time on Sunday Night Football. Now, part of my analysis was wrong. He is seeing a strong 66% of the snaps. But Herbert was the man who scored a touchdown last week on a limited snap share. Now, I'm not ready to cut the bait on Swift, right? To completely get out of Dodge when it comes to Swift, as I think when Caleb Williams figures it out, I could see DeAndre Swift playing well. But until then, he shouldn't come within a school zone of your lineup. I think starting DeAndre Swift is an insane move. Herbert was the running back 3 in terms of snaps last week, playing behind Swift and Travis Homer, both seeing more snaps than him. But like I said with Swift, Herbert did score. Swift didn't. Regardless, he had just 2 carries. There is no reason to start him. For the Indianapolis Colts, based upon where we drafted Jonathan Taylor, the start of this season has been nothing short of blue balls. But, and this is a big but, shout out to Mrs. Incredible, Mrs. Pixar mommy there, last week was far better looking than things were back in week number 1. The Bears defense is solid. I don't think this is the easiest matchup on earth, but I still think we should be relying on Jonathan Taylor hopping back on the saddle Clint Eastwood style this week, and he should have a top 12 showing until I am proven otherwise that Jonathan Taylor isn't that guy. I'm going to continue to rank him inside of the top 12 as a must start running back. Trey Sermon will be spreading the good word weekly, but he is just really the clear handcuff to Jonathan Taylor. Nothing really much to do with him. You gotta sit him. Next up, we move to the Houston Texans at the cold like Minnesota Vikings. Now, Joe Mixon got hurt on a hip drop type of tackle on Sunday Night Football, which is now illegal. Head coach DeMeco Ryans said yesterday that they're going to take it day to day. Then a report came out around midnight that his ankle injury is not considered to be long-term or serious. Now, sometimes when those reports come out, they're a little bit fugazi, a wazi, and a woozy, and they say one thing, when in reality, it's the exact opposite. Christian McCaffrey's going to be fine. This, that, the other thing. We're going to be fine. Christian McCaffrey's going to play week 1. Don't fucking worry about it. And then Christian McCaffrey's going to be out for fucking 6 to 8 weeks or whatever, right? Now, I don't think that's necessarily the scenario here with Joe Mixon, but I would continue to look into things and not just make an assumption and stand clearly on that, right? And say, oh, he's definitely 100% going to play. Now, I'm going to assume he's going to play, but I'm not going to guarantee that. I think that's far from a guarantee. You want to be monitoring this all week if you have Mixon. Now, Mixon had a bad game last week, but that was due to the injury, because when Mixon was healthy in week 1, he was an upper echelon option. Due to his injury-riddled season so far, just to start off the season and the offseason, I will keep him outside of the top 12 as of right now. I am as much of a doctor as Johnny Sins, but it is, at least in my opinion, a little bit concerning, but you definitely want to start him as a top 24 back, assuming that he suits up. Now, Dameon Pierce did end up missing last week with a hamstring injury. If he returns, though, he may have lost his role to Cam Akers, as Dameon Pierce has not looked good since, 2022, and Akers looked solid against the Bears. Akers look like Bo Jackson or something? No, it doesn't look like he's going to surpass Mixon, but he does look better than Dameon Pierce. Sit him, though. Aaron Jones came out the gate of the season Katniss Everdeen style because he caught fire. Get it? Like the movie. But in week number 2, he had a down game. But it was up against the San Francisco 49ers, so how can you judge him, right? How can you really hate on the guy? Aaron Jones a little bit older, going up against a tough defense. Just brush it off. I didn't really expect a huge game, so hopefully you guys didn't either. So I'm not surprised. I think he's going to bounce back as a low-end running back 2 up against the Texans. Ty Chandler definitely looked better compared to Aaron Jones last week, and why I think Chandler is a top-end, upper echelon type of handcuff, right? If something was to happen to Aaron Jones, then you would be bricked up to potentially throw Ty Chandler in your lineup with how good Mono Man Sam and this Vikings offense looked. I would be ecstatic if I had Ty Chandler, but right now, with no reason to believe that Aaron Jones is even limited in really any fashion, I think that you can't be starting Ty Chandler. Again, continue to monitor the Joe Mixon health situation, especially today, because if you are a Mixon owner, you might want to go ahead and pick up Cam Akers to double wrap the condom around your team, right? Just to be extra careful. Because if your running back core is decimated like my toilet after I eat Taco Bell, you might want to be a little bit cautious when it comes to things, especially with all of these injuries across the NFL. I don't want to sit here and blabber on for an hour about injuries, but holy shit, does it feel like the league got wrecked Ralph style by injuries in week number 2. I don't remember how, like, a time where this many players were injured that were this good this early on in the season. And maybe it's just because no one got hurt in the offseason, so everyone's getting whacked Soprano style early on in the year. The Philadelphia Eagles, Eagles fly, at the New Orleans Saints. And what happened on Monday Night Football was the Eagles died as Kirk Cousins, Kirk Thuggins, Coles, Cash, Kirko dropped his nuts in their mouth and won the game. Saquon Barkley had the game slip through his fingers. Now, it was still a great performance outside of that, but I know Saquon Barkley is going to be beating himself up about that for the next couple of days. That was rough. Now, it wasn't technically Saquon's Saquon's fault because that dumb bastard Vic Fangio did what he did on the Dolphins, which is why I wanted him, you're fired, get out of there, because what he did against the Titans was he didn't bring any pressure, right? He was just having guys chill on the goal line. He did it multiple times last season. And that's why the Dolphins had to go to the frozen tundra instead of playing at home in Miami in the playoffs. But I digress. I don't want to go on a rant here as a Dolphins fan. But Vic Fangio, no bueno. Saquon had a good game, though. The Saints defense might be a brick wall potentially because the Saints defense has looked really good in back-to-back weeks, but I would be lying if I said even in a scary matchup, I wouldn't be 100% confident with Barkley. So Barkley is a locked and loaded top 5 running back. Don't galaxy brain yourself out of starting Saquon Barkley because the matchup, Kenneth Gainwell, any of the running backs behind Barkley, when Barkley's healthy, he's that guy. There's no need to even waste time talking about him. I feel when it comes to Alvin Kamara, like Raven from That's So Raven, I saw the fucking future and told y'all that you need to draft Alvin Kamara back-to-back weeks as a top 6 finisher, and he's just getting started. He was the running back 1 up against the Dallas Cowboys defense, which is a matchup on paper that was going to be incredibly tough. And I thought, you know what, maybe Alvin Kamara comes a bit back down to earth, and this dude beat the brakes off of that defense. The Cowboys stood no chance, and he could have had another touchdown if Derek Carr didn't rush one in. So this matchup might be tough, right? It might not be as easy as the last couple of games, but you would be foolish, you would be crazy to rank him anywhere outside the top 6. The Saints might be legit. Now, again, I'm not here to write them a Super Bowl ticket after week 2, but with how the NFC is, now I'm not going to say I wouldn't bet on them to make the fucking Super Bowl or even win the Super Bowl, but they're definitely looking like a force to be reckoned with in the NFC. And I expect another game where Kamara is blowing the defenses back out. You got to start him. No brainer, no ifs, ands, or buts. Now, Jamal Williams is doing a great job of holding Kamara's Gatorade on the sideline. I heard he likes the orange flavor, even though I personally don't like the orange flavor. My favorite flavor is light blue. When he sees touches, he looks way better than last year. If you watched Jamal Williams last year, it looked like the guy was stuck with a bunch of weights tied to him, like he was training to be in the military. I don't know if anyone from your guys' high school like went to the military, but they would put on like full-on vests. They'd be fucking running with weights tied to them the whole time. And I'm not making fun of them. I respect the military, so don't think about it that way, but that's really how Jamal Williams was running. He was running like there was a fucking 1,000,000-pound strap to his chest. This year he's looking a lot better. And even with the Saints offense hitting defenses with a fucking steel chair every single week, WWE style, it would be insane to start Jamal Williams. Next up, we move to the Los Angeles Chargers at the Pittsburgh Steelers. We just had a victory lap discussing Alvin Kamara, and I'm going to run around again. Another victory lap, but this time for J.K. Dobbins. But before we break down the rest of this game at the running back position, as well as all the games going up until the doubleheader on Monday Night Football, I would like to give you guys a quick word from our friends and our sponsor over at Underdog Fantasy. If you're new to Underdog Fantasy and use promo code Notorious, you'll be able to claim your free pick, which this Thursday is going to be Aaron Rodgers higher than half of a total yard, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. If you're watching this video after Thursday Night Football already occurred, or maybe it already kicked off, you will get a different free pick for one of the games on Sunday or Monday. You take the Aaron Rodgers higher than half a total yard, you match it with one of the players on the Patriots or one of the games from Sunday or Monday, and if both of your picks hit, you will get 3 times what you enter into your pick'em. So again, sign up with code Notorious to claim your free pick, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. So back to the Steelers and the Chargers. J.K. Dobbins has been on a roll like a fat dude going down a hill, right, with incredible speed. And in any other matchup, I would be banging my chest like King Kong on the top of the Empire State Building, as he has been an elite back in back-to-back games. But against the Steelers, I'll calm down a little bit. Now, you're still going to start him because the guy's averaging 9.9 yards per carry and looks like he gained that old school explosiveness back. I, for one, love J.K. Dobbins in the offseason, but I knew, hey, he's pretty risky, right? Coming off the Achilles, maybe he won't look the same. But he looks like that never even fucking happened. He looked like he did early on in his career. He is a mid-tier running back 2 for me on the week because of the matchup. Again, if this was any other matchup, I would be just loving all over J.K. Dobbins. No Diddy. That dude's in prison now. Fuck him. I told you guys to draft him in the summer. J.K. Dobbins, that is not P. Diddy. So I hope you have him. Let's all say a collective prayer, though, to the fantasy gods above that he's able to stay healthy, because we all know that's the biggest downside of Dobbins. Now, Gus Edwards, one of these days, because of how much volume Gus Bus is getting, he's going to pop off and have a good game. And maybe not a great game, maybe not like a top 5 game, but like a top 18-ish game. But the guy right now is currently moving in slow motion compared to Dobbins. Dobbins is like when you're scrolling through TikTok and there's like this funny video and it's at like 2 times speed. They sound like Alvin and the fucking Chipmunks, and there's like Minecraft gameplay at the bottom or Subway Surfers. And Gus Edwards is like watching a movie in super slow-mo. Even with 18 touches last week for Gus up against the Panthers, which again, like I wouldn't even wipe my ass with the Panthers defense. He only had 59 yards. And with Dobbins clearly healthy, starting Edwards is just stupid at this point. For the Steelers, Najee is one of the bottom of the barrel starts for me. Not only did the Chargers defense actually look pretty good, Warren outsnapped Najee last week in Denver. The Steelers offense simply isn't good enough right now to elevate Najee Harris into a huge performance. But with all that said, with what sounds a lot like negativity, I doubt this game gets out of hand to a point where they can't run the ball. And I also don't think there's really a way where, unless Jaylen Warren really just steals all the snaps, to where Najee Harris is just a fat bust like you haven't cranked off in a couple of weeks. So I think Najee will be startable. But again, it's not like he's startable top 24 guy locked and loaded. Just going to be fine, but I just really heavily question the upside. Jaylen Warren, I really do think he's better than Najee Harris. But as of right now, the touch split and the snap split just isn't large enough for you to even want to favor starting Warren. Next up, we move to the Denver Broncos at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I just want to acknowledge that the NFL really screwed the pooch last week, having, 9 or 10 games at 1 o'clock? And then just a couple of games at 4. It felt like things were going super fast mode, like an old Only Use Me Blade video. Things were going incredibly fast. And then it was like the Matrix where everything slowed down. This week we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games in the late slate. We have 1 Sunday game and 2 Monday games. So at least the 4 o'clock slate will be a little bit better. And we're talking about Eastern Standard Time, of course, because that's where I live. That's where all the superior people live, of course. Wink, wink, right? Javonte Williams, to get into the actual point of the video, Javonte Williams is another one of those guys, just like Najee, that's a low-end start. While I didn't expect much against the Steelers last week, he did have a decent enough showing for you not to be crying yourself to sleep if you have to start him. Now, going up against a much softer matchup in the Broncos defense, if Bo Nix could just not throw the ball directly to the other defense, Javonte will be a fine running back 3. Based off of what we saw last week, it feels like the team wants to use Javonte as a bell cow all summer long, like that Kid Rock song you were hearing. Sean Payton, Javonte Williams, he's the guy. Don't worry about these other motherfuckers. He is the guy. Now, week 1, it's like, wow, that's a lot of Jaleel. And then in week 2, it's like, wow, that's a lot of Javonte. Now, the question is, will they stick with that game plan? Or was week 2 an anomaly? Or is week 1 maybe the anomaly? Answer to that question is unknown. So you cannot be starting McLaughlin and Javonte Williams, again, bottom of the barrel start. For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Rashad with 2A's White left Sunday's game in Detroit due to suffering a groin injury. It has been reported that the injury is minor, and he should be good to go for this Broncos matchup. Now, just like Mixon, you should keep a close eye onto things if you are a Rashad White owner, because if things do go tits up, things go wrong, and they got to start Bucky, funny that a guy named Bucky is on the Buccaneers, then he could really be a top 12 running back. Now, I'm not here to glaze Bucky Irving a lot, but Rashad White has been very inefficient, and this is a wet dream matchup, so if for some reason he cannot play, then Bucky Irving would be a good start. But right now, even with all of the inefficiency, even with Rashad White running into the offensive lineman's ass like he's Mark Sanchez, I still think you got to start him as a high-end running back too, due to his receiving upside. He makes up for all of his inability to rush the ball correctly. Just his vision is absolutely terrible. It's like when you were in high school and they gave you the drunk goggles and you had to drive, what are those called? Like one of those little bicycles, like you're the guy in Saw, and you couldn't see anything. And that is just the most bullshit thing ever, because when I got older, the first time I ever drank, I thought that that's how you would feel. I thought you wouldn't be able to see anything, and it was shockingly the opposite. I was more locked in than ever. So Rashad White should be a high-end running back too with that top 5 upside. But again, he is very, very inefficient. It's pretty frustrating. So with Rashad White healthy, Bucky doesn't get enough volume or even pass-catching upside to even tip the scale towards potentially playing him. But again, if White was to miss, you would definitely want to start Bucky Irving. Next up, we move to the Carolina Panthers at the Las Vegas Raiders at 4 o'clock. First game at 4 o'clock. We had all those fun games early, and now you get slapped with this bullshit. Bryce Young, no longer. It is Red Rifle, the Ginger Ninja, Andy Dalton season. Andy Dalton going up against the Raiders. Now, Andy Dalton might be able to take Chuba Hubbard out of the mud, right? Because Chuba Hubbard's down astronomical in this offense. When you're a running back, your team needs to at least be remotely in the game for half the game. And the Panthers with Bryce Young under center, they were losing by 7,000 points before the match even started, right? It was like in 300 when it's the 300 men versus the gazillion other men, right? That's how it was for the Panthers. It felt like the Panthers did that play. Remember when they snapped the ball to Pat McAfee and there was just a center out there? That's really what it felt like. Like Bryce Young was getting mauled, murdered, assaulted, diddled behind the offensive line. It was so fucking hard to watch. And I just couldn't start Chuba Hubbard because of it. Now, I get that Bryce Young looked like he was playing with the IQ of simple Jack, you make me happy. But I don't think Andy Dalton's like the savior of the Panthers. Now, for the sake of Hubbard and Deontay Johnson, as a Deontay Johnson truther, as a Hubbard truther, I hope Dalton looks good enough, for Chuba to work out. But why would I even throw him out there to the Wolves? Why don't I just watch it with my own two eyes, get a visual, say, hey, you know what? Dalton looks good enough. I'll play Chuba next week. That's what I'm going to do. Miles Sanders, you are not playing that guy in the Lord's year of 2024, so don't even think about it. Zamir White, after week 1, you're thinking, all right, I liked Zamir White. I did. I was a Zamir White truther. I thought he looked good for 4 or 5 games last season. I said, you know what? At ADP, his ADP wasn't so high to where I can't take him. I'm going to take him, and I accept the risk. He might not be good. Week 1, fumble! And Alexander Madison's the guy. Oh, damn it. You know what? Maybe that was a swing and a miss. And it didn't even take a couple of weeks. Sometimes with these running backs, it's just instantly, you're fucked. Sometimes it's like, oh, you got to wait a couple of weeks. And then you realize, you know what? We got to cut our losses. So week 1, everything goes wrong. Heavy usage of Alexander Madison. Then week 2, though, Pierce is like, you know what? We'll give it back to White. 63% of the snaps. But even with all those snaps, he couldn't even score 7 PPR points. But if there ever was a game for Zamir White to turn back the clock to last year, if there ever was a game for Zamir White to go ballistic, go balls to the wall, it would be up against the Panthers defense. So I'm willing to start him as a lower end option. I fully acknowledge here. I'll bend the knee. Arya Stark wouldn't be the correct use there. I'll bend the knee to McQueen, Jon Snow style here, right? And say, you know what? Maybe Zamir White ends up fucking me in the ass metaphorically, but I'm still going to play him because the Panthers defense is just that bad. Now, Alexander Madison has now scored in back-to-back weeks, which just hurts my soul as a Zamir White guy. I hope the touchdowns start to go Zamir White's way. This continues being a trend, though. We might just have to cut bait on both Zamir White and Alexander Madison because it feels like every single week you're just going to be confused on who to start. You would need to be astronomically down bad, though, in my opinion, to start Alexander Madison based upon the snap share we saw last week. Next up, we got my Dolphins at the Seattle Seahawks. What could have been the Hawk-Tua matchup instead. Get it? The Seahawks-Tua matchup. But now it's Skyler versus Geno. And as a Dolphins fan, I know this game is going to break my spirit. Going into the year, I knew we'd probably lose to the Bills, but I thought before the bye week, this schedule is simple. It is as easy as 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, right? It's so easy. Dolphins they'll lose to the Bills. They'll win every other game, though. Now it's Skylar Thompson season, and I know what this game is going to do to me. I'm going to lose years of my life watching this. Now, again, this isn't a fucking Dolphins documentary. We're talking about fantasy football here, but I'm worried, guys. Chat, I'm worried. So, Devon A-Chan, Devon 2 Chains. I liked him in the summer. Liked him last year, too, because I'm a genius. And guess what? He's good. And not just good, he's great. Tony the Tiger style. He's going to be a mainstay inside the top five of my rankings going forward, regardless on if Mostert's old ass is able to go. A-Chan has a death grip over this backfield, coming off of an ankle injury in a game where I was a little bit worried. I was a little scared. I was petrified. He had 165 all-purpose yards and a touchdown back-to-back weeks with 7 targets, and I expect the offense to focus heavily on A-Chan with Tua out. A-Chan is locked and loaded as a top 5 running back in my rankings. I don't care how the Seahawks defense has looked. I expect A-Chan to face fuck that defense. Jalen Wright, he could be the running back too. It might be Wilson. It seemed very, very close between him and my name Jeff Wilson. The game script's probably going to be negative, though. I do think the Seahawks will be up a decent amount in this game. So I think Wright or Jeff should definitely just be sits. For the Seattle Seahawks, Kenneth Walker III, missed last week with an oblique injury, and the report from Ian Rappaport prior to the game, and Ian Rappaport actually has me blocked on Twitter because I made a joke at his expense, and he blocked me soft, but please don't block me, Ian Rappaport, I apologize. So the report prior to that game that they played up against the Patriots, was Zach Charbonnet is going to potentially be the guy for longer because they want to use caution with Kenneth Walker III. Now, does that mean 100% that he is out up against the Dolphins? No. No, it does not. But my expectation is that he will be out. Would I bet my life on that? No. But I think it is very, very much more likely the possibility. In Walker's absence, Charbonnet ripped off a top 10 performance up against the Patriots defense. And with the Dolphins defense being softer than a pair of titties, I really do expect that Charbonnet should be ranked inside the top 18 and could have a very big performance. He feels incredibly safe while also having big upside. If Walker does end up playing, you are going to play him. Obviously, if he is out, then Steve Jobs' cousin, Kenny McIntosh, should see a few snaps as the running back too. And few snaps is literal. It's not like, oh, he's going to play 10 snaps. Motherfucker Charbonnet played 96% of the snaps last week for the Seahawks up against the Pats. Next up, we move to the Baltimore Ravens at the Dallas Cowboys. A disaster game for both teams. The Ravens lose to the Raiders, and the Cowboys lose to the Saints. The Ravens are 0-2. 0-2. Not good. Derrick Henry. We saw Alvin Kamara just eat the Cowboys defense alive like there were some cats in fucking Springfield. So I really do think that Derrick Henry could do the exact same thing. Now, except for the 1,000,000 touchdowns that Alvin Kamara scored, I expect the Ravens offense to look better than what we saw last week against the Raiders. So we should still operate under the assumption that Henry is still a great back. I get Henry might not be the same as he was a couple of years ago, but I still think he's one of the better running backs in the NFL. The offensive line is a big concern in Baltimore, especially going up against the Dallas Cowboys. But again, we just saw Alvin Kamara fucking eviscerate them. So I'm not going to fully panic here. Henry has scored a touchdown in back-to-back games. So even if things go wrong, you could get a bailout special touchdown. He's a top 12 to 10. And the 12, I guess, would be the correct saying there, ranking running back for me on the week. Justice Hill took the back seat last week like that freestyle from Kendrick Lamar. After being heavily involved in week 1 up against the Chiefs, feels like in more negative game scripts, you're going to be able to potentially fire uphill in deeper leagues, but I don't think this game script is guaranteed to go opposite, right? Like, the Ravens could easily be beating the Cowboys into the ground, and Derrick Henry could get a whole lot of touches. For the Cowboys, it's very simple. You're sitting both Zeke, and you might just get hit with Rico McMillan Dowdle. Dowdle outsnapped Zeke 43 to 40%, but that is not a large sample size. And in week 1, Zeke outsnapped Dowdle, not by a large margin. Now, the Saints slutted them out in that game, so I don't know how much you want to take from that. I really just wish Mike McCarthy, the fat bastard, would just stick to one of them. It's going to be Zeke or it's going to be Dowdle. Because if it's just this 50-50 game all season, it's going to be tough to ever actually want to start any of them. Next up, we move to the San Francisco 49ers at the Los Angeles Rams. The 49ers took my hopes and dreams of winning my survivor pool and buried them out back. Pet cemetery, right? Jordan, the numbers Mason, has lived up to the hype in back-to-back games. Week 1, he has a huge game. Top 12, right? Beautiful. And then, up against the cold like Minnesota Vikings, he's top 12 again. 2 straight games with over 100 rushing yards and a touchdown. While it absolutely sucks that Christian McCaffrey is hurt, and I feel deeply sorry that I told people to draft him as the running back 1, until Christian McCaffrey comes back, which feels like a decade away at this point, Jordan Mason is a must-start running back. The Rams' defense is softer than LeBron trying to get a foul late in a game, so I expect a top 12 performance at minimum up against the Rams this week, and wouldn't be shocked if he sit with the crown King Henry style as the running back number 1. Isaac Guerendo saw 4 snaps over the last 4 weeks total. Shouldn't even be rostered, but I think he is the number 2 running back there. Kyren Williams has been a pretty big letdown for me this season. He's seen all the snaps like I thought he was going to. Problem is, the offense is bad. Now, he hasn't burnt you completely, right? He's not scoring like 3 points a game, and he is the clear workhorse running back, but with the offensive line being a straight-up turnstile and with the offense losing Puka, Cooper Kupp, everything has just gone wrong, and until those guys get healthy, it's going to be a large chink in the armor of Kyren Williams. Now, it's not going to completely sink his battleship, but it definitely hurts when push comes to shove. You can't sit him, but in a matchup up against the 49ers, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like, oh my God, you have to start Kyren Williams. He's a mid-tier running back too. There's a lot of injuries. You're probably going to have to play him, but I don't think this will be his biggest of games. And while Corum put up a nothing burger in week number 1, he appeared in week number 2 and had 8 touches. With Kyren being the clear guy, though, Corum is just a handcuff as of right now. I thought maybe Corum would score some touchdowns and maybe in some positive game scripts you could actually start him. But with the Rams so hurt, like that's just never going to happen. Next up, we move to the Detroit Lions at the Arizona Cardinals, which could be the highest scoring game of the week, in my opinion, my favorite game of the week. Now, I get that the Cardinals defense suffocated the life out of the LA Rams offense, but I do not believe that will be the same fate that will be suffered for the Detroit Lions. The Lions looked bad last week, right? They looked like, you ever watch Rock and Roll McDonald's? What's that thing called with the guy that passed away, sadly? The guy that eats McDonald's for like a month straight, right? And then they showed it and it was like, oh, this is what McDonald's looks like a month from now. And it doesn't look that bad, but it just wasn't right. And that's just what the Detroit Lions looked like, and I expect them to bounce back. Even in a down game for the Lions, we still saw Gibbs have a top 12 running back showing, and the targets have been hefty for him with 6 or more in both games this season. So Gibbs is a must-start running back based on where you drafted him, based upon how he looks. He's a top 8 back for me on the rankings. Now, like I said with Jahmyr Gibbs, though the Lions offense was on the struggle bus, Monty had a top 14 game. He scored a touchdown in both games as well, and he feels like wrapping your team in that Trojan weekly. He will be very much most weeks at minimum a top 24 back, and with his running back upside being top 10, like if something was to happen to Gibbs, knock on wood, he'd be like top 5. But he even has top 10 upside when Gibbs is healthy. So he's a clear as day mid running back 2 on the week. James Conner, I said this last week, so I apologize if I sound like a broken record, but I'm going to say it again. Death, taxes, James Conner, top 12 running back. As long as this guy is walking the earth, he'll be a top 12 running back. It doesn't matter if it's because Le'Veon Bell is off jet skiing in Miami, right? And then James Conner gets to be the lead back on the Steelers. Or if he's a 29-year-old unk in Arizona, he's a top 12 running back. It's crazy. It really is crazy. The offense didn't look the best at week 1, and James Conner looked great. Week 2, they look amazing. James Conner looks amazing. I don't know if Conner will be able to squeeze into the top 12 on my rankings this week, but if he can't bust through into the top 12, then he'll be like my running back 13. So I think very highly of him. I definitely want him in my lineup. Trey Benson, brother of Freddie Benson, as well as Cedric Benson. He got some work in garbage time last week. No, that was really it. He got garbage time. I think he could be a good back if something was to happen to Conner, which normally happens. Knock on wood, we don't root for injuries, but as of right now, you're not playing Benson. Next up, we move to the Kansas City Chiefs at the Atlanta Falcons, because you waited all day for Sunday night. Taylor Swift and the Chiefs versus Kirk Thuggins. Man, oh man. The Chiefs, they're impenetrable. It doesn't fucking matter. The refs will just throw every call their way. Nick, that was a fair call. I know it kind of was a fair call, but dude, it just always seems like there's a bailout special for the Chiefs. Sack Patrick Mahomes, illegal sack. You stop Rashee Rice, illegal stop. Like, the only person that can stop Rashee Rice, I guess, is the fucking cops when he's driving. So Carson, stop the steal. And Samaje Perine should share the load like an Angela White and Mia Malkova threesome video. But with Kareem Hunt potentially looming on in the distance, I wouldn't start any of these Chiefs running backs in Pacheco's absence. Once we get some more clarity on the backfield, maybe we can figure out who to start because of how much of a wagon the Chiefs offense is. But as of right now, just stay away from him and Samaje Perine, especially if Kareem Hunt comes there. Now, Bijan Robinson, with Kirk Cousins looking so bad in week 1, I was starting to really panic. He's coming off the Achilles. He just wasn't doing anything right. And he looked a lot better against the Eagles. Does he look like his old self? Fuck no, baby. But he looked good enough. He led that touchdown drive. Touchdown, Drizzy Drake London. The upside of Bijan is now kind of almost fully unlocked, because now with Kirk Cousins actually looking good, that's how we get that upside, because they're up in the game being able to run. And I don't really think Cousins has reached his final form, right? I don't think he has fully evolved yet. And if we do see him look like his former self, then Bijan's going to be cracking defenses week in, week out as a top 3 back. I'm not going to cut the rope, jump ship after 2 games. So I definitely think, and he's been fine these first 2 games, just not as good as we've wanted. He's a top 3 running back on my rankings this week. I'm not going to overthink a guy like Bijan Robinson. Algier's averaging 6.2 yards per carry, and if something happened to Bijan, knock on wood, you would obviously want Algier as a top-end running back 2 option, but with Bijan healthy, you're not starting Algier. Now we got the first game of a doubleheader on Monday Night Football. I have no idea why they do this. I'm someone with 2 TVs. Thanks to you guys for supporting my videos. I really do appreciate you. Without you guys, none of what I do is possible. So while we've been going for a very long time, I don't want to sit here and fucking get all emotional or something, but it does mean the world to me. All of your guys' support means everything to me. I do really love you guys, and I appreciate everything. Genuinely, we are so close to hitting our next milestone of subscribers, and it just means everything to me. So thank you guys so much. I don't like the doubleheader on Monday Night Football. I'd rather have a doubleheader on Sunday Night Football, but maybe you guys feel a little bit different. Jaguars at Bills. Bills 2-0. Jags 0-2. What that tells me is that the Jaguars are going to win this game by 30. That's just how games like this will go. Travis Etienne has scored a touchdown in back-to-back weeks, but has really yet to have a huge performance, which is something we saw a lot out of Etienne last season. And the Jaguars' offense appears to be just broken, right? And they don't look like that offense that they looked like early on in last season when Trevor Lawrence was healthy. Now, I'm not going to quit on them, right? I'm not going to throw Etienne to the side. I don't want to play with you anymore like Andy in Toy Story. But Etienne's upside is really linked to the Jaguars' success. And if the Jaguars continue to lose games, it's really hard to rank Etienne inside the top 12. As of right now, I've just got him as a high-end running back too. Tank Bigsby is currently dealing with a shoulder injury, which is something we need to monitor as there's basically no information on it right now. I was dolphin diving through the interwebs like my name was White Boy 7th Street, and I just couldn't find anything positive or negative about it. You got to keep searching, I guess, keep reading through the files. If he misses and Dearness Johnston is the backup, I would slightly bump up my projection for Travis Etienne. James Cook had the Dolphins defense calling him daddy, dude. That was, as a Dolphins fan, I am a James Cook truther. I talked him up all summer, so I was happy with the performance. But at the same time, he was butt-fucking me, pause, without the use of lube. It was so bad. And I had him on my fantasy team, and it still hurt. Thursday Night Football, the dude ran a train on us. 3 total touchdowns, 95 all-purpose yards. The touchdowns were the talking point of the summer. Can he get more touchdowns? Because the touchdowns have been non-existent through the first part of his career. But if he can just get a touchdown a game, he could easily be a top 8 running back at the end of the season. Against the Jags defense, I love Cook as a stone-cold lock to be a top 10 back, and hopefully he finds a touchdown to, help us do that. Ray Davis, just the backup. I don't really want to waste too much time talking about him. We've already been talking for a while. Final game here. The left hands up. Who are we? The Commanders at the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are 0-2. The Commanders eat a W up against the New York Football Giants last week. Brian Robinson and Jaden Stormy Daniels have been Eiffel-towering defenses since the start of the season. B-Rob would have had a huge showing last week if he just would have scored a touchdown. He ran for 133 yards, but sadly he didn't score, but still had a decent enough game, right? But up against the Bengals defense, I could definitely see Robinson putting 2 and 2 together, having the big rushing game, finding the end zone, and I think he could end up as a top 12 back, and I'm not going to be that ambitious and rank him there, but clearly the guy over Eckler, and I love him as a mid-tier running back too, to a high-tier running back too. For Austin Eckler, if you're looking for a safe bet to score 9 to 12 points, I think that's what Eckler is, due to his pass-catching prowess. But I will note, he has gotten a little bit lucky because he's been busting off some big receptions, right? It's not like he's getting 8 targets or something ridiculous. He's getting 4 targets, and he's taking them deep. So if he doesn't do that, you'll probably end up disappointed, but I see no reason why he wouldn't be able to do that against the Bengals. So if you're in a deeper league, he's fine. Zach Moss, to me, the Cincinnati Bengals offense is just stuck in neutral. They didn't look like straight ass last week, Remy LaCroix style, right? But there is still clear room for improvement, right? I'm not going to sit there and say they looked so bad to where it was laughable, but they didn't they're just not gelling correctly. Like, it's been a problem for the Bengals the whole Zach Taylor era, where they just come out flat. Like, they basically have whiskey dick for the start of the season, and it's just kind of annoying to watch, if I'm being honest with you. Moss, though, is in the driver's seat of this backfield over Chase Brown, so you got to rock with him. Due to just how shockingly bad the Commanders' run defense is, he should be, at minimum, a low-end running back, too. Chase Brown had just 4 carries for 31 yards. He is explosive, and that's what we talked about all summer, but it basically seems Jover for Chase Brown to steal that job away from Zach Moss. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying today's video, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button like it owes you some money. Leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. Check out one of the videos on your screen if you haven't seen them already. Again, make sure you guys do check out Underdog Fantasy for that free pick, which is Aaron Rodgers higher than half of a total yard, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Again, promo code Notorious, or by clicking on the link in the video description. I love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great guys' day. We'll be back with the wide receiver version of today's video a little bit later. So I hope you have a great one. As always, good boy.